what we're going to talk about today, we're going to focus more on long pace. It looks like Ferrari continues to have the best race pace based on what they did yesterday compared to what McLaren with Piastri and Verstappen did. When we get to that, we're going to look at the times. Antonelli looked fantastic today, ran 132.803. First, finally, people are going under the 133 mark for the first time. Piastri had 132.861, about 600th of a second behind him, and Verstappen had 133.162. Um, I get the feeling that even though Antonelli ran 132.8, the Mercedes can go a lot faster than that. Now, George Russell was way back with 134.1, and he was the seventh fastest today behind Hulkenberg, Colapinto, Norris, Hamilton, Verstappen, Piastri. That tells me that Russell is sandbagging. He's not putting the full engine mode into his runs. Piastri was a second, 1.3 seconds behind, um, was 1.3 seconds ahead of Russell. So we shouldn't read anything into this times. We want to still talk about the benchmark performance that Verstappen did last week, in which he was hitting 344 kilometers on the straights and entering the corners at about 254 kilometers, especially the high speed corner on 12, and had basically two races with a race sim that's still superior to anybody else so far for a race sim. We know that in short bursts, Mercedes has had the best average time, like for bursts of up to let's say anywhere from 7 to 15 laps, they're averaging about 136. Verstappen yesterday over 20 laps averaged about 137, but on harder tires. So what I'm saying then is that if you look at short bursts, short stints, Mercedes is focusing on these going pretty fast, but Verstappen's pace on longer stints, 20 to 40 laps, is a little bit slower, but it's superior because it's clear that he's holding within himself. And if he went with the stints that Mercedes goes with, he'd be just as fast, if not faster. So, for example, let's look at the one lap pace for Antonelli today. He went 132.8. That's very fast. Verstappen has gone over 20 plus laps, has gone about a 136. And he's with even though his average time of those laps is slower, we're seeing that he's the only driver right now that it along with maybe I think Leclerc that isn't clipping at the end of the straights, which means that Verstappen's going 344 kilometers per hour at the end of the straights. And when you look at the telemetry, he's not flooring it. So what I'm going to argue is that if Verstappen did an all-out lap for qualifying right now, it would be faster than the time Antonelli did, which is 132.8. But also, if Antonelli went all out, because I don't think he's going all out, if he puts his engine mode higher, he will also have a higher top speed. The only advantage I think Verstappen has, based on the telemetry now, is that it looks like the Red Bull car is the best at harvesting. It's the only car so far that's demonstrated that on the straights, it can keep on accelerating into the next corner. So it's going to be interesting to see who's going to be faster between Mercedes and Red Bull for qualifying. I get a sense that over one lap, Mercedes will be faster than Verstappen's Red Bull for qualifying, but I don't think it's going to be more than a tenth of a second, even if that, maybe 500. But based on long race pace right now, Verstappen is still the benchmark for having very fast times over a lot of laps without any tire drag. And at the same time, even with those very long races, he has not been pushing his engine, which means it can go faster. So it's going to be interesting to see that. But today we want to look at the long race pace between Piastri and Verstappen. They did a race sim today, and apparently, if you look at if with the race sim, if the McLaren with Piastri was racing Verstappen today, Verstappen would have won by 7 seconds. They had about the same average pace per lap, but Piastri's car had a drop off. There was more variation between his laps. So if you look at it overall, they had about the same pace, about 138, 139, but still Verstappen comes out second, 7 seconds ahead in the whole race because uh, McLaren had high spikes of high speed, but then later on, due to tire drag, the lap time started to degrade, whereas Verstappen was still maintaining the same metronomic pace lap by lap by lap. So what that tells us is that if we go by this, and I believe that Piastri was going all out, the Red Bull with Verstappen is faster than with Piastri. Now we all know that Norris probably has better race pace. I mean, it has better tire management than Piastri. So my guess is that if that had been Norris during the the race sim today, he would have been closer to Verstappen. Maybe they would tie. Maybe Verstappen would win by a little bit. That's the $1 million question that none of us will be able to answer. So far this week, Ferrari has had the best overall race pace with Leclerc, but a lot of pundits are saying that if you look at the telemetry, Leclerc is going harder on the corners and Verstappen is going better on the straights, so that they believe that in clean air, Leclerc is faster than Verstappen in his car, but Verstappen is faster, uh, would be faster if he gets a qualifying ahead of Leclerc because Verstappen is so fast on the straights that Leclerc would be in his dirty air. Same thing with Hamilton. Hamilton did a little bit better today. I think he came fifth overall on the laps with about a 135 point something. But none of these times mean anything because all of these cars are going way slower than what you're going to go for qualifying. Qualifying is going to be about a 129 or 128. So I guess what I'll end with, for what we know so far, Mercedes probably has a slight edge in one lap pace above uh, Red Bull. Ferrari right now has demonstrated the best race pace, but other teams haven't really tried to do it. And it looks like, even though Ferrari has the best race pace, it looks like Verstappen is sandbagging for race pace and is still almost faster than everybody else except for Ferrari. So we believe that there's a lot more to come from Verstappen for race pace. The $1 million question, though, is what will Mercedes do for race pace because they haven't been doing race pace. They've only been doing short bursts of 10 to 15 laps. They haven't been doing extended runs. My guess is that they're either sandbagging or they know their car is so powerful that they don't want to push it over a whole race pace, but we'll see. What are your thoughts, Kunle?
Yeah, I was actually going to say Lewis Hamilton actually came fourth, not fifth. And the reason for his improved performance today was because they tested the radical upside down rear wing. And this seems to have been the reason why. Now, it's interesting whether.
Yeah, but
Um,
Kunle, you're making a causal leap. His time was fourth best. How do we know that he got faster because of that?
well, I mean, that was what improved because
What
he
was his
had
time? Kunle, what was
his,
his time?
his time was 1:33.408,
Yeah, and
which
and and Leclerc went 133 something also. But my thing is that we can't jump to conclusions that it's because of that. It may just be because he was going faster. Because
well,
that
then
new thing that they've had to the back, nobody knows that that's going to make them faster. But even if it is, these are still slow times. What's his
yes.
name when one? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, but I'm still saying that it still made a noticeable improvement. And the thing is that the question is whether that will now show more when Leclerc has a go. Maybe he might. I believe that if that's the case, Ferrari's engine is very fast. They might also be sandbagging a bit. I believe everyone is sandbagging a little bit to different extents. So it'll be interesting to see what whether this actual change to the Ferrari car's rear wing is actually real or imagined. It's quite on a, it's on. I'm impressed with Mercedes. Mercedes were sandbagging a lot yesterday. They've obviously lifted up their game today, and they're right up there. Same for McLaren. McLaren were also taking it easy, as I had thought, but McLaren are now trying to move to be more competitive. But when I look lower down, there are a few people there that I didn't expect to see in the top 10, like Albon and Bortoleto, whose name I haven't mentioned in ages, and also my favorite team of next season, Haas, Bierman, Cameron Ollie. He managed to get in as well. They've managed to complete more laps and be more steady because I think that they were having problems with the reliability of the cars and so on and so forth. And also, it's quite obvious that Audi are still having their problems, and it's quite obvious that the Cadillac is reading the rear, which I'd always suspected that they would do. But again, it's still early stages, and there's still a lot to see. We won't really know the truth until, like you said, we start proper racing, and then they start going below the
Yeah,
130
but I
mark.
think it's clear. It's clear. Once again, we're going to go back to Verstappen's benchmark. So let's start looking at the numbers. Verstappen is going 344 kilometers per hour. Even today, when uh, what's his name, Antonelli had faster times, his top speed was still only 326. So what you're looking at is that for performance, the Red Bull consistently has a higher top speed. Lewis Hamilton and Leclerc, they've hit like 320. Now let's talk about the corners. Going into the corners, Verstappen's going in at 256 kilometers per hour. Antonelli's going at 254. Everybody else is going at 218. So what I'm saying is that this doesn't seem like sandbagging to me. It seems that Mercedes and Red Bull have extremely good entry speed into corners. Also, Piastri went 350. Not
Talking about sorry to cut you there.
Yeah,
Talking
yeah.
about going into the corner so quickly, I got some news that Verstappen has got like a new kind of braking system.
Oh
Braking,
yeah.
I
So
mean, how he
What
brakes.
Verstappen is doing in slow corners,
Yes.
he's going into gear one, and by going into gear one, it increases the revs and it charges the engine so he has more speed on the
Yeah.
straight. This
Mm-hmm.
is why I'm telling people you have to be able to analyze F1. The signs are
Mm-hmm.
that Verstappen is doing some crazy shit, and he's actually the one sandbagging. Verstappen is sandbagging right now because what he's doing is like Mike Tyson boxing with for 10 years older. He just shadow boxes and lets the other one hit him, and he's just doing light punches. And he's doing a light punch, and when the kid goes home, they have a black eye from a light tap. That's what Verstappen is doing because the numbers that he's doing consistently and entering the corners because his car is the only car that has energy on the straights, and they believe that's because of him downshifting and doing the revs. And what he's doing is that he's entering the corners at a higher speed, but as soon as he enters the corner, he downshifts. And also the downshift
Downshift and then,
and also the
mm-hmm.
downshift also brings downforce because downshifting. Have you ever noticed that if you drive a car and you put it
Yeah.
in gear one, it goes down to the ground.
Mm, yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
it gives him downforce. So my point being is that we can't pretend like we don't know what's going on. We know that most likely Mercedes and Red Bull are headed for a collision this year. McLaren maybe. The problem with McLaren is that McLaren has balance, but they don't have a lot of speed. Ferrari looks good too, but they are Ferrari. So I mean, I'm going to put my
Yeah.
I'm going to
Right.
say it straight up right now. This is going to be is the biggest unknown is what is Mercedes race pace. I believe that Mercedes is sandbagging their pace, but also I believe that Verstappen is basically jog. Have you, John? You've seen when Usain Bolt will run 9.9 in 100 meters and he's jogging the whole thing, and everybody else is running all out and they're running 10. That's what Verstappen is doing. He's basically going at 70% and still having high numbers like 344 kilometers per hour and everything else. But the unknown is that I believe that throughout this whole thing, Mercedes has been using a lower engine mode. But here's the thing: if they use a higher engine mode, they'll have more power on the straights. But that won't solve their clipping thing because the clipping thing is not about engine mode. It's about how good your software is for preserving energy. And I think that's where Verstappen's car is has an advantage over Mercedes. They don't have the raw power of the Mercedes engine, but I think it's been demonstrated that Verstappen's car has the best fuel efficiency, thermal efficiency, and has the best measuring out of pace over a whole race. You see what I'm saying, Johnny? Now that doesn't
Yeah.
mean, but for all we know, Mercedes can do that too, but they're just not showing it. Yeah. Yeah. What were your last thoughts, Kunle? Then we'll go to Johnny. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, man.
It's looking like what the main struggle is going to be this season is going to be the battle between Mercedes and McLaren. I think Mercedes are looking at this season to try to overhaul McLaren, especially with the improvements in their engine. McLaren are trying to more hang on. I do leave Red Bull at the front for now. That's why I wasn't discussing them because I always tend to shy away from the leader because the leader. I mean, the leaders are so far ahead. In this case, it looks like the main struggle is going to be for that second place for both the team and the individual. And to that extent, I think most of the fighting in race fighting will be between most like. But I'm not sure. I'm a bit surprised. Antonelli seems to be out threatening to do to Russell what Russell was trying to do to Hamilton in his final times when he was getting
Russell
all
does
the
this all the time. Russell does this all the time. Free practice
yeah
one, free practice two. Russell is
yeah
methodical. He drives. It's not that he's sandbagging. He drives slow in practices because he's analytical. He's trying to learn where the breaking points and stuff. I promise you, Russell. He's like what's his name, Leclerc, not Leclerc, Piastri. They drive slow. Not that they're sandbagging, but they take their time. And then by the time you get to Q1, that's when they start bursting it. You know what I'm talking about, Johnny? That's what I think. But what
I
do you think?
still think that Antonelli seems to be improving relatively. He's doing better now. If you look at when he started his first few races, he wasn't
Yeah.
as close to Russell as he is now in terms of position. So he is his ceiling is quite high, and he's getting better, and he's still a teenager. So there's
He
still
has a
going
higher
to be
ceiling. He has a higher ceiling
yeah.
than Russell. I agree with that. But I think that he's doing faster times than Russell now because Russell is deliberately driving slower because he wants to build up his understanding before he pushes it. Yeah. But what are your thoughts,
Russell
Johnny?
is
What,
wily.
yeah. Yeah. Russell is also wily. So trust me, Russell's going to burst out with a 131 tomorrow. I'm just joking, but he's going to do fast time. What are your thoughts, Johnny?
I think another person that's going to matter this season is going to be Piastri. I think
Yeah,
Lando
he had
Norris
the
was,
second fastest time today. Yeah. Hmm.
and yeah, he had a good drive today. And Piastri needs to show less fear when he tries to take on his teammate, because I think that's going to be a bit of a drama this season as well. How Piastri is going to fare with his teammate, because there's no reason why Piastri shouldn't be able to challenge to challenge Russell for that driver one
You mean
status
not
for
Russell, you mean Norris. Norris, yeah.
Norris, sorry, to challenge
The,
Norris for that driver one status for
the
McLaren.
problem with Piastri is that he doesn't have the same driving skill that Norris has. Norris is a smoother driver, has a better feel for grip, but Piastri is more consistent than Norris. He works harder, he makes less mistakes, he's more mentally in touch. So Norris has a higher ceiling than Piastri. That's what I'm saying. But what Piastri's main thing is to not pay attention to Norris and to continue being methodological the way he is, because Piastri is methodological.